Hello, everybody. You're more than welcome to keep your cameras on. We want to keep this as an interactive session, only if you feel comfortable. So, firstly, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I see a lot of familiar faces, a lot of our students, alumni, and welcome to all the new faces that we see. Glad to have you here. I'm going to take a moment to introduce our presenter today. Rishabh is an award winning composer, producer, songwriter, sound designer, uh, professor at Berklee College of Music. He's an Ableton certified trainer and just a fantastic musician. It's so amazing to see all the work that he's done. Rishabh is also a one of our GMI tribe mentors. So we're really proud to have you on board, Rishabh, with us. And thank you so much for being here today and conducting this workshop with us. Everybody's been so excited. We've been talking about this for weeks now, and there were so we had a pretty busy day today with all our classes on the campus, and students were rushing back. They were like, okay, we got to get back home so that they can attend your session today. So it's just a pleasure to have you here. In fact, some of you might not know that Rishabh and I went to Berkeley together. We actually, started out in Delhi as guitar players in different bands and used to exchange guitar books and, way back. And then we ended up, as flatmates for some time when we were studying at Berkeley. So Rishabh, so great to, see all the amazing work you've done and you're doing. Really appreciate your association with us. And once again, thanks for doing this and over to you.
Thank you, thank you. Wow, that's a great intro. Yeah, it's like we've come a long way, right? Before we were just noodling on our instruments,
Exactly.
sharing like pirated videos of Dream Theater guitarists or whatever, showing how to
Exactly.
play scales and like who
I
can play
know.
the scale the fastest,
I
like
know.
yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, and now you have an entire school running and so many people, educating them. That's awesome.
Thank you, man.
So yeah, it's great to be here. So it's like I don't know what to say. I guess I will just start with the thing that I'm supposed to talk about. So what I wanted to do was kind of see what you all are, where you all are at in terms of your existing knowledge of, let's say, vocal production, because that's the topic of the day. So see where you're at, because I don't want to just talk about stuff that maybe you already know, like, this stuff I already know, or this stuff is like way too complicated. Can you kind of explain the process and stuff like that? So, how do we do this? Because it's on Zoom, right? Can you raise your hand? I guess you can raise your hand virtually. Um, so firstly, like, what DAW do you all prefer to use? Like, if you're producing music, and I'm going to assume that you all produce music, or at least use the program to produce music, and not just performers, because everything I'm going to show you is more production, not so much performance. But still, even if you don't, it's a great way to kind of get a taste of the production world, right? So I don't know how to do this. Maybe you can put it in the chat if you're shy to speak or whatever, or just Ableton, Bitwig, and oh wow, it's like I know one of those three DAWs. So Ableton, Logic, okay, FL
That's good.
Studio, wow,
Yeah.
Logic Pro, Logic Pro X, Ableton. All right, so basically everything, right? so, so it's a good thing I know a little bit more than just Ableton. So what I'll do is I'll demonstrate some stuff in Ableton, maybe a little bit in Logic as well. FL Studio as well I use a little bit, so we can go down that route. Um, okay, so that's good to know. So it looks like a lot of you are kind of leaning more towards Ableton, and I believe at GMI you are taught Ableton live, right? Or you also teach other DAWs?
We teach other DAWs as well, but obviously we are an Ableton Certified Training Center, so definitely we work really well closely with Ableton. But we are pretty much, DAW agnostic.
Ah, DAW agnostic.
Yes.
So that's cool. That's cool. Very cool. And yeah, the techniques I'm going to talk about today, you could potentially use in any DAW. And some of these are going to be third-party plugins, so you can just use that in any DAW. Cool. So that's good to know. Now, one of the most common vocal production techniques that people use, people have heard of, is vocoding, right? So maybe you can get a taste of the room here. Has anyone used a vocoder before? Again, in the chat, if you want to speak. Experience with vocoders. Yeah, okay, so you've used vocoders before. No, yes. All right, little bit of both. So here's what I'll do. Let's start off with maybe talking about what exactly, instead of just showing you, okay, this is you drag the vocoder device on your vocals and voila, we now have this robotic voice, right? So yeah, you can watch a YouTube video, do the same thing. But let's talk about what exactly a vocoder does, what exactly is happening. So then you don't have to rely on like presets and stuff like that. You can kind of design your own, let's say specifically vocoding sound. You can tweak it to customize it to your certain tastes. So yeah, so I do have Ableton Live loaded up. So I can share my screen here. Let me know if you're getting the sound. I'll close this session, talk about this later. This is more a different topic. Don't save, okay? So I'll start from scratch. So I have Ableton Live open here. I'm going to load in a vocal part to use as a demo. There's one that comes in Ableton Live 11. It's literally called Vocal Demo. If you search for Vocal Demo, go to samples. This is like the demo project that the program comes with. I'll switch over to arrangement view. Just drag this onto a track. All right, here's some vocals. Make it a bit quieter.
Standing in the rain, feather down in my brain. I was doing silly things just to make you look at me.
Yeah, you get the idea. It's singer singing stuff. Good. So yeah, so I plan to use a vocoder to make the sound more cool, more, robotic sounding, give it like a different vibe from that natural, sound that you're getting from the singer. So one very important thing to understand is a vocoder. So when you listen to a vocoder, you are not listening to the vocal anymore, right? So right now when I hit play,
standing in the
you're hearing the recording of the singer, right? But when I add the vocoder and do all that stuff, what you're hearing is a synthesizer that has some characteristics that are kind of extracted from the voice and applied to a synthesizer, right? So that's important, and many people do not realize that. So you are hearing a synthesizer, you're not hearing the voice. We just have some aspects of the voice applied to the synthesizer, and that's why it kind of sounds like the human voice. So that means the synthesizer is important. So in Ableton Live, you add a vocoder as an audio effect, and then you have to tell it, okay, where is this synthesizer going to come from? In Logic Pro, they have a synthesizer that has a vocoder built into it, and you have to tell it where is the voice going to come from so it can analyze the voice. So it works a little differently in these Studio Ws. In FL Studio, the vocoder is just the vocoder. You have to give it a synthesizer signal and you have to give it the voice signal. Yeah. So there are two terms, technical terms that I use, the carrier and the modulator. Yeah? The carrier is the thing that you listen to, that you're actually hearing at the end of the day. Like I said, it's a synthesizer. The modulator is the voice, right? The voice, we're extracting information from the voice and we're kind of modulating the synthesizer signal. So that's what's happening. So yeah, so let's go ahead and load in that vocoder. All the way at the bottom, V, drag that over here directly on the track. Now, if you, I should probably talk about this. A lot of folks who are maybe relatively new to Ableton Live, when you let's say go into the audio effects or any of these categories, so let's say instruments. So let's say you want to load in a synthesizer. So let's say a wavetable. I'm assuming Ableton Live users here are aware of wavetable. So typically what you may do is like you might open this up and then load a specific preset. And yeah, it's absolutely great way to work with the device. But you can also just load the entire device in. Right? You can just load the entire that folder in, and what you get is like the default setting of that device. Right? In this case, it's like a basic sine wave like tone. Yeah. So every device in Ableton Live has a default. In any DAW, there will be like a default setting, like a default preset, let's say. So a lot of times when you want to start from scratch, it's a good idea to not load in a preset, because the preset will have all kinds of stuff already set up, and then you have to kind of, disable all that to get to the direction that you want to go into. So that's what I did with the audio effect, the vocoder. I did not open up a preset. I didn't open this up, and having said that, there aren't that many presets. I just loaded in the entire device onto the track. All right, so now we have this vocoder in the default setting. And I love the default preset sound. So let's have a listen to this default preset for the vocoder.
Standing in the rain, feather down in my brain. I
Beautiful, right? So, so we've now transformed that that clean female voice singing into this really scary, almost like horror movie soundtrack like effect. So the reason for this is the default preset, the carrier that I mentioned, the synthesizer that is being used is just noise. Yeah. So what does noise sound like? Let's go back to that. I removed that, right? Let's load in a different synthesizer. I'll go to instruments here. So this time I'm going to load in, what should I load? Let's load an operator. So another synthesizer I just loaded in. The default setting for that synthesizer is also a pure sine wave. I'm going to change it to noise. A different style of noise on synthesizers, the most common one being white noise. So if I make this a bit quieter, so here that's a little bit filtered. Right, so that's noise, right? So no matter what key you press, you get this like bright, sound, noisy sound. So that is being used as the carrier for this voice, and that's why it kind of has that scary, noisy, light texture. Let's listen to it one more time. Standing in the rain, further down in my brain, always doing silly. Right, so if you want that effect, you're doing like this horror movie soundtrack, you want to get that effect, you just work with that default preset. But I don't want that. I want that classic, vocoder sound. So instead of noise, I can click over here in this carrier category, drop down, and I can choose from these other options. Typically, you want to choose external, and then you want to tell, okay, here's this external synthesizer sound, use this as the carrier, and then apply the information from the voice onto the synthesizer. All right, so then you have more control over what that synthesizer sound is going to sound like. But there are a few other options like the modulator itself. So here, I don't know why this option is here. So, because it seems redundant. Because not redundant, it just seems pointless. So in this case, what's happening is that the carrier is the modulator itself. So basically what we're saying is analyze information from this voice and apply it to the voice. I'm like, okay, what is the point of that? You just, it's like, right? It seems like a weird paradox, but it's useful. You could create like an interesting sound. In fact, if I play this right now,
and further down in my brain, I was doing silly things.
Because the analysis is very specific, it's kind of lo-fiing the voice, right? So the voice doesn't have as much high frequencies.
Standing in the rain,
kind of mellow.
Down.
I don't know, it'll distort a little bit there. So if you listen to the thing without the vocoder,
standing in the rain,
nice and bright, low frequencies, high frequencies, all that good stuff. Turn on the vocoder where it's analyzing the voice and applying kind of like low quality information from the voice onto the voice. It kind of sounds
standing in the rain, feather down in my brain.
Right. So again, yeah, I don't use this as much. Pitch tracking. Now this vocoder has a built-in synthesizer, very basic synthesizer, a monophonic synthesizer. So let's say you're too lazy or just you don't have time to set up another synthesizer and play notes and all that stuff. This vocoder has a built-in synthesizer. Now how do you play notes on it? You don't have to play notes on the synthesizer. It will just listen to the voice and it'll track the pitch, right? So there's pitch information in the voice, the singer singing something. It'll try to copy that information and apply it to the built-in synthesizer. So let's have a quick listen to that. Yeah, so it sounds pretty much the same, right? So instead we're using any of these four waveforms. You can transpose the pitch up or down, but essentially it's like a monophonic synthesizer that's running there. But I want more control over this carrier sound, so I'm going to switch to external, and I'm going to tell it, all right, so I would like to use my custom other synthesizer instead of your built-in thing, right? So let's load in. I'll work with Wavetable because it's a very visual device, easy to explain things as well. So as you notice, I just dragged in the default preset. We get this sine wave sound. This is the amp envelope that controls the overall amplitude of the sound. I'm going to kind of simplify this. So when I play a note, you hear the sound. I let go, you stop hearing the sound. A sine wave is too pure of a sound to use in most cases. There's very specific uses for sine wave. For a vocoder, not ideal at all. We need something brighter, something that has some richness, some harmonics. So I'll go with the standard sawtooth sound. Let's have this nice bright sound, a lot of harmonics. This is ideal for a vocoder. All right, so we're going to use this as the carrier, right? So let's go back to the vocal track where we have the vocoder, and we'll tell it, all right, we've already told it to choose an external signal, but in the second drop down, we have to tell it, okay, where is that external signal coming from? Because in Ableton Live, we could have so many different tracks. It needs to know, okay, which track is this track that has a synthesizer? So over here, I will choose that other device. And here you can see it says wavetable. I've chosen that. So now, as long as I'm playing notes on wavetable, that instrument with my MIDI controller, that is what we're going to hear, and then information from the voice is going to be extracted and applied to the synthesizer signal. Now, I don't want to hear the clean sound of the voice. I just want to hear the vocoded sound. So I'm going to bring the level all the way down here. You see on the right, this is the volume control for this track. So now if I play, you don't hear anything, right? It's silence, right? So now if I was to play some notes, I'm just going to play a simple C major triad. Oops, what did I do? Hang on. I did it the wrong way. I was thinking I'm working logic. So I had to do the opposite. So I'll leave the volume up on the voice. I'll bring the volume down on the wavetable. Now, I do want to hear wavetable. I do not want to hear the dry voice of the singer. But what's happening here is that the vocoder is going to get the information from the synthesizer. Yeah? You can see it says audio from wavetable. So it's taking the information from wavetable and it's going to output it from here. So you want to bring the level down on the wavetable, so we don't hear the synthesizer, the clean synthesizer sound. I don't want to hear that. I want to hear it through the vocoder. And I do not want to hear the voice. And as long as the dry wet on this device is all the way to 100%, we're only going to hear the vocoder. We're not going to hear any of the clean voice, right? So now I'm playing notes on the keyboard. We're not hearing the sound because it is not vocoding the voice. I need to hit play so it'll listen to the vocals. And now when I play some notes on the keyboard, right, so I was just playing inversions or whatever, like different chord progressions, and we're hearing the result of that voice information being applied to the synthesizer. And that's basically the fundamentals of how a vocoder works. You have some kind of synthesizer signal, you play notes on it, make sure it's harmonically rich, you route it to the vocoder, and you make sure that original dry sound of the synthesizer you mute or you bring the volume down so you don't hear that dry sound, and make sure the dry wet on the vocoder itself is up to 100% and you get this pure vocoding sound. One important takeaway here is that I don't have to worry about the original pitch, the original key of the singer, right? So in fact, if I was to bring the dry wet back down, I'm just playing in C, right? Ooh. she's not singing in C, but I don't care, right? Bring the dry wet all the way up. I can play in any key. Let's go to a different key. Right, so it doesn't matter because we are not getting information of pitch from the voice. We're just getting information specifically, it's actually amplitude information, how the amplitude changes on the voice. We're applying that to the synthesizer. The pitch information is coming from the synthesizer, right? Because we're playing notes on the synthesizer. So that's really great. So I can even get a speech or someone who's like completely out of tune. So I have a class where I teach some of these topics and I make everybody do this, right? So they were like, but I'm not a singer, I can't sing. Like, don't worry, you don't have to sing. You can be completely out of tune. The vocoder sings for you, right? Or technically the synthesizer is singing for you. So that's a very convenient thing. So you can take any kind of spoken thing, vocal a cappella from any song that's in a totally different key, and you can, kind of transform it to work in your specific key. Other things we can tweak, general parameters we can tweak. If you want the quality of the vocoder to be a bit more intelligible, you can change the number of bands. So what happens is that the vocoder, as I said, it analyzes the voice and then gets information and applies it to the synthesizer. So that information is extracted by splitting the audio into multiple bands. So this is the number of bands. If I reduce this to, let's say, 8, so it's splitting that vocal information into 8 different frequency bands, right? So let's say low frequencies, mid frequencies, high frequencies, 8 different bands, and analyze that information, apply it to the synthesizer. So not very clean, not very intelligible, because we don't have much detail from the voice. Going back in here, if I increase the bands, I think 20 was the default. Let's go higher. Let's go to 32. Notice how clean, you can actually hear what the singer is saying. Add some reverb, it can sound pretty. Add some delay. Right, sounds really nice. So and it goes up to 48, 40 bands. And at this point, when it's above 30, 40 bands, it's a very subtle difference in terms of quality. You're already getting the best quality. I don't want to say quality, let's call it intelligibility, right? On Logic, the limitation for the bands is 20. It only goes up to 20 bands. It goes lower, but doesn't go higher than 20. So if you had both DAWs, if you were to compare, you'll notice that the Logic vocoder doesn't sound as nice, or it sounds more robotic, right? Because it has less information that it's gathering from the voice. So that's one key parameter there. Another parameter to play with is the formants. And now this is not specifically anything related to vocoding, it's just the formants of the voice that you can transpose. So if you notice right now I'm speaking, I have kind of a relatively deep voice. If a female was speaking, her voice would be a little bit higher, right? So those are referred to the formants. So we can transpose that for this singer. And the higher you go, because she's already a female voice, we're moving it even higher, you get that funny chipmunk-like effect. But if you go lower, kind of, making her sound like a male. So you can kind of play around with that. That's a fun parameter to maybe automate over time. Now, there's another very important aspect of, at least in Ableton Live, the vocoder that many people do not know of and they don't engage. So there's this thing called unvoiced. Now, if you think about the human speech, when we're speaking, we have vowel sounds. So all the different oo, ah, e, and all that stuff, across languages, for all the different vowel sounds. And then we have consonants like the ts, k, ch, all that stuff. Now, the synthesizer here is only reproducing the vowel sounds. It is not reproducing the consonants. Because vowels tend to be, in fact, let's do this. Let's zoom into this vocal. So you notice that there's a pretty consistent shape, like it kind of looks like a sine wave, almost, or maybe like a triangle wave, right? So this is probably a vowel sound. But as I scroll across, that's probably a breath. Scroll across. Oh, look at that. I'm guessing this is like a k or ch, right? Change, like ch. So that little section there is like very squiggly, doesn't have a consistent shape because it doesn't have a specific pitch, right? Like drum sounds, hi-hat. When you're playing on your hi-hat, there's no pitch to it. It's kind of noise. But if you, on the drums specifically, if you hit the toms, they kind of ring and they have a specific tone. So now vocoder is not recreating this part. It's kind of like ignoring that and just recreating this. So when the singer is singing change, it's just going like change, right? So the chirp part is, it'll still try to recreate it, but it's not really, authentically recreating it. So what they decided when they were developing this technology, they figured, okay, so we need to recreate that separately. So let's use another engine just for all the consonants. And that other engine is just noise. We talked about noise earlier, and that tends to be like noise. I said, hi-hat sounds and all, you can kind of recreate with noise. So that is labeled as unvoiced in Ableton Live. So if I crank this up, whenever there's, it doesn't take that information from the synthesizer. It's just taking the information, it's just analyzing the audio. Whenever it notices that there's a consonant, it'll activate the noise signal, and we will hear that, right? So right now, if I don't play anything on the keyboard, a very interesting thing will happen. Check it out. Not playing anything. Let's get rid of the delay. I'll make it louder so you can hear that better. Sounds kind of silly. It's like, what's going on here? So we're just hearing all the consonants. And if I play notes along with it, we hear a mix of both the vowels and the consonants. Again, starting from the beginning. Like just that first one. Standing, right? It's coming from the noise, and the rest of it is being generated by the synth. Right, there's more realism because of that. If you don't have this unvoiced element, right, ending in the rain, right, we're missing out that part. So that's another important parameter on the vocoder. So that's it for me in terms of vocoding. At this point, if anybody has questions related to this, please feel free to throw that in. In the meantime, I'll give you a little example. I'm not a singer, but as I said, you don't have to be a singer to use a vocoder. So I'll give you a quick example here. In the meantime, feel free to ask any questions if you'd like to, microphone, I would say. What is that thing called? A microphone, right? If you want to turn on your mic, ask the question, or I armed the track by mistake, so you could hear my voice through Ableton Live. So any questions, feel free to ask right now, or if you would like to put in the chat, that works for me too. Very quiet. Okay. Oh, there you go. All right. Takes time to chat, to type, right? Okay, no worries. Let's see. Wider, if I'm saying that right, wider. I've been working on the vocoder effect for some time. How do you make it clean? So kind of like what I mentioned to get it. Let's use this as an example. So this is my voice here. I was trying to sing something, not doing a good job, but I added the vocoder. The vocoder has the band set to now in this particular example, I'm not going for that clean, intelligible voice. I'm going for that lo-fi, old school vocoder sound. That's why the bands is set to 28. Yeah. But if I want more clarity, more intelligibility, I could increase the number of bands. Yeah, we could also talk about this, the range. So this is the frequency range within which it's going to analyze stuff, right? So you can reduce that frequency range to be more focused on a certain frequency range, let's say the human voice, or you can just make it nice and wide, so it'll just analyze everything in the audio. But yeah, in terms of clarity, cleanliness. Oh, another important thing. I chose that sawtooth, very clean sawtooth sound. If you choose, this is a mistake a lot of students make. They'll choose like a fancy preset like ambient and evolving. Right? I choose one of these presets. Now this preset is complex. There's a lot of things happening in there. And then you're applying the vocoder effect onto the synthesizer. So it can be hard to hear the actual vocoding. To get the cleanest possible vocoding sound, you should use something like this, which is just a pure sawtooth sound. Yeah, so just two notes, just like, what do you call it, like dyads, right? Two notes creating harmony, and it's just this pure sawtooth sound. So let's hear this. I'll bring the volume down because the sound is going to the vocoder here. I have some basic like EQ compression, and this is like some live looping thing. But let's hear it through the vocoder.
Doing it right, everybody will be dancing and be feeling it right. Everybody will be dancing and be doing it right. Everybody will be dancing and be feeling alright. Everybody will be dancing to doing it right. Everybody will be dancing and be feeling it right. Everybody will be dancing and be doing it right. Everybody will be dancing and be feeling alright.
I'm adding this. I'm adding like a bunch of effects and all that stuff to, you know, make it sound cool. But in terms of the actual vocoder, if you just listen, if I briefly embarrass myself, listen to the original voice.
Doing it right. Everybody will be dancing and be feeling it right. Everybody will.
Not bad for a non-singer. I'd say I'm pretty decent. Pat on my back, right? So all the singers like, what's this guy talking about? So, but the vocoder, put the vocoder on, and you get this cool. Now it is lo-fi sounding because of the band's set to 28. Let's crank it up to 40.
Doing it right. Everybody will be dancing and be feeling it right. Everybody.
I did EQ some of the lower end here, so maybe open up that EQ.
Doing it right. Everybody will be dancing and be feeling it right.
There's an enhance button that kind of changes the overall quality. Let's compare.
Doing it right. Everybody will be dancing and be feeling it right. Everybody.
It does the opposite. When you turn it on, it kind of reduces low frequencies and all that stuff. So maybe you want to keep that off if you want, or you know, wider frequency range. There's another button here called retro. So that is on, so it's kind of retro or lo-fi sounding. If I turn it off to precise.
Doing it right. Everybody will be dancing and be feeling it right. Everybody will be dancing and be doing it right. Everybody will.
And this is the 48 bands. This is basically like an EQ. You can choose to make certain bands quieter, make certain bands louder. So let's reset all that. So all bands are nice and loud.
Doing it right. Everybody will be dancing and be feeling it right. Everybody.
All the basses, I don't know if you're hearing this on your systems over Zoom. I don't know how well it's translating, but now we're hearing a lot more bass from my voice because my voice is kind of bassy. But I didn't want that, so I'd EQ'd it out, right? So I kind of got quietened those bands on the vocoder. So yeah, I would say that would be the best way to think about getting a cleaner vocoder sound. Use a sawtooth, plain sawtooth sound. And yeah, these parameters on the vocoder. For more questions, it's great. Melvin says, I don't use Ableton. Is there a third-party type of vocoder you recommend to use for Logic or Pro Tools? And then Shubham says, Logic has a pre-installed vocoder, but I'm not sure. Yes, you're absolutely true. There is a built-in vocoder in Logic. The thing with Logic's vocoder, as I said, works very similarly. It's just an instrument as opposed to audio effect, but the bands only goes up to 20. So if you're going for that, I want that clean vocoder sound, you're not going to get that with Logic. You're going to get that retro lo-fi sound because it only goes up to 20 bands. There are excuse me, third-party vocoder devices. One very popular one is from Isotope. Let's quickly swap this out. So I'll turn off this vocoder. There's a thing called Vocal Synth. Audio units, Isotope, Vocal Synth 2, version 2. I'll drop that here on the vocals here. This is it's not just a vocoder, it has a bunch of different engines, and they simplify the process because, they've designed the synth for people who may not know all these details that we now know. So I'll turn off everything else here, just the vocoder is on right now. The different modes set to auto, so it has its own synthesizer, it'll just create the vocoder for you, or you can say, no, I want to use there's a MIDI thing, so it has an internal synth, you can play it with sending it MIDI data, but there's a sidechain input. You can say, all right, so I'm giving you this other signal, and here it's showing you how to set it up. If you load this plugin in FL Studio, or if you load this plugin in Logic, it'll show you, okay, how to do it in Logic, right? So step 1, create an audio track and insert vocal synth. I did that. Step 2, create a second audio track and make sure there's audio on it. Okay. On audio track 2, find the audio 2 dropdown and choose track 1. The next dropdown, select vocal synth 2. That's weird. I think the second track should be, as we know in a vocoder, you need 2 signals. One is going to be a voice, the other is going to be a synthesizer. I'm not sure what they're saying, like have 2 vocal tracks here. But let's find out. I'll choose that, hit accept. I will route this wavetable synth to the Vox track, and specifically to, you can see here, 3 for vocal synth. So now wavetable, the sound from wavetable is going into this plugin, vocal synth. And we're not hearing anything. To be honest, I've never tried this. I'm just doing this on the fly here. So let me see if I've set up everything correctly. So vocal synth is loaded in. I've routed the signal from wavetable into vocal synth. The volume is up, but let's double check here. Yeah, everything else is off. Let's try the other mode where we just send it MIDI because it has an internal synthesizer. Let's try this MIDI. You can just take a MIDI track and send it. Yeah, we could do that. So I'll just create an empty MIDI track here, and I'll drag this MIDI data over. Let's use this one here. And so in Ableton Live, you can route information from one track to another. So from here, I'll say, okay, why don't you send this data over to the Vox track and specifically to vocals? And these are the 16 MIDI channels. Let's just choose MIDI channel 1. Doesn't matter, it'll still work irrespective of the channel you choose. So now we're going to use the internal synthesizer, but we're playing it. We're defining the notes of the synthesizer. Oh, there we go. That's working. That's the format control. Everybody will be dancing and be feeling it right. Everybody will be dancing and be doing it right. Everybody will be dancing. You can click over here, and then you have control over the actual synthesizer. You can see here it's using a sawtooth wave. That's why it kind of sounds cleanish. This vocoder, unfortunately, only, as you can see here, these are the bands. And if you see how many, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, like, yeah, less than 20 bands. So it is kind of lo-fi sounding. If you change this to vintage or smooth, you get even lower number of bands. So in terms of, if you want that like cleaner vocoder sound, maybe vocal synth may not be the best thing, or even Logic for that matter. Maybe consider moving to Ableton Live. The other questions I see here in the chat, how do you use vocoders support the main vocals, how to glue them together? That's a good question. And Shubham was like helping me troubleshoot. Thank you. Have you disabled the... yeah, I'm not sure what happened there with the routing thing. But just to save on time, let's just move forward with that. But there is a way to route it an full audio signal, and it will listen to that audio signal and use that as the carrier. But how do you glue the main vocals with the original? So one important thing, that then you have to sing, right? You have to be a singer, unlike me. So on this, can I undo? Or I'll just delete the vocoder here, go back to Ableton Live's vocoder. So if I want to glue it along with the original, I'll bring down the dry wet.
Doing it right.
And to turn this back on, move this back up, delete this MIDI track here. We don't need that.
doing it right. Everybody will be dancing and be feeling it right.
Everybody will be dancing and be doing it right. Everybody will be dancing and be feeling alright. Everybody will be dancing tonight, doing it right.
Yeah, so again, I'm not a singer, so it just doesn't sound that nice, right? Blending in my voice with the vocoded sound. But let's say you are a singer, you can, like adjust the dry voice, and you're hearing your clean dry voice, and hopefully you are singing the same key as the notes of the song, and it's gonna sound nice and cool. Question from CA. Chongtu. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce that name. Is there a way to do this in live performances? Absolutely. So in any DAW, your vocoder, instead of, in fact, let me do this right now live. So this particular vocal track here is receiving a signal from my current mic. So I'll just say, hey, listen to that voice, and I'll bring the driver down. So you won't hear my voice. You'll just hear the sibilances and the ch, k, p, ch, all that stuff. But when I hit play, let me get rid of this here.
So now you're hearing me speaking, but it's the chords of the song, and it sounds like I'm singing, but I'm not. But it sounds pretty interesting, because I don't have to sing, right? So you can do this live.
Yeah. So that's, and you're probably hearing a blend of my voice because you're hearing the clean voice go through Zoom as well. So yes, you can absolutely do this live. You can, instead of hitting play, I could have played, so I could do this. I'll arm the track here. So arm this track. So arm both tracks. So arm the track that you are going to use to play with your MIDI controller.
And then on the track that's gonna have your voice, and it's gonna sound like you're singing through a vocoder in real time.
Yeah. So yeah, you can absolutely do this live as well. Cool, good stuff. I don't want to spend too much time on vocoding because I planned out like so many things. It's already like different time zone for you. So, but 40 minutes into the thing. So maybe we can try something else. But feel free to add in more questions if you like. Let's move on to vocal harmonies. I'm gonna switch this out. Don't save this. Now, okay. So a lot of times, what you hear in music on the radio, and when you hear this interesting vocal synthesis being applied to a voice, we assume it's a vocoder, but usually it's not vocoding. It's like synthetic harmony generation, right? So there is a particular audio device that is synthetically creating harmonies in real time. Well, it doesn't have to be real time. If it's a production, it can be done offline. But essentially, the harmonies are created by the computer. And it's a very simple process. It just takes the voice and transposes it up or down, right? So a very simple thing I could do, I'll just make a copy of this thing here. So let's say this is a vocal part. Not my voice, an actual singer. I'll turn off the effects here, just hear the clean voice.
Full time, you talk your money up while it's living in.
So I can just copy the track, and you can do this in any DAW, Logic, FL Studio, and then transpose this. Let's say I'll transpose this up 7 semitones, and now I have this parallel harmony.
Full time, you talk your money up while it's living in a coal mine. Told time to call you mine. Hey, mine, hey, mine.
Right, so that's basically synthetic harmony generation. I'm going to take a little pause here and address that question from Dhruv. Does it help if the modulator is producing the same pitch as what the synth is playing? Not really. You can see earlier I was just speaking, and the vocoder was still doing a decent job. Yeah? So I guess you can see, yes, it'll help, because every note, if you're singing in the same key as the song, so the analysis stuff that's going to happen, even though it doesn't care about pitch, but it cares about amplitude. But the alignment of, even the amplitude changes and everything will align with the key of your song. So yeah, I guess it will help, but yeah, it doesn't really matter at all if you're singing. Now we're talking about, sorry, I was talking about the carrier, right? So that's a synthesizer. So you're talking about, does it help if the modulator is producing the same pitch as well as synth is playing? Yeah, so the voice, yeah, absolutely. So the voice does not have to sing in tune when you're using a vocoder. The only time when you have to be singing in tune is when you bring in the dry voice. When you're hearing the clean voice without the vocoder, obviously it is important that it's in tune. Hopefully that answered your question there, Dhruv. But continuing along here, so yeah, so that's harmony generation, but that's kind of boring because it's just it sounds a bit funny, that the chipmunk effect is being transposed up, and it's the same harmony throughout. So it would be nice to create like actual harmony in a specific key where it's constantly changing and stuff like that. So there are different plugins for this. Ableton Live doesn't specifically have one that does this. So I use so this is one of my go-to plugins. It's over here. It's called Harmony Engine. It's produced by Antares, the company that makes Autotune. You probably heard of Autotune. So this company makes this device called Harmony Engine. So this basically creates harmony, right? So you can see here there are 5 sliders. The first one here is the original voice, and then we have 4 sliders for the 4 harmonies that it could generate. You can basically tell it to be really lazy. You can say, okay, this song is in this particular key. It's C major, and then you just produce all the harmonies for me, and you can kind of like define like what kind of inversions and all that stuff you want. So that's simple harmony generation. But the really cool thing is that you can define the harmony in real time via MIDI. So you can tell it, I don't care what you think the notes should be. Listen to the notes that I'm playing. Or not listen, but check out the MIDI notes that are coming in and use that information to define the harmony. Right? So if I play 4 notes, those 4 notes are going to be the transposition values for these 4 harmonies or harmony voices that you are going to generate. And that is very, very cool, right? So you can create your custom harmony. It sounds more interesting because it's constantly changing. It sounds a bit more organic rather than just transposing the whole voice up by 7 semitones or 5 semitones or something like that. So let's listen to an example here. So this is the voice we heard earlier. I'll disable everything else except a couple other techniques here, but yeah, let's just listen to the original voice. Sorry, it's not even this track. It's on this track over here. Sorry, we can turn this one off. So on this track, the same vocal, I just duplicated it. We loaded Harmony Engine on it. It's set to chord via MIDI. So it needs MIDI data. So in Ableton Live, I just have a MIDI track, an empty MIDI track, and it's sending MIDI out to that particular effect on this particular track, and it's listening to it. Any DAW, you can do the same thing. In Logic, you can set up Harmony Engine. You can set up another MIDI track and say, okay, hey, send this MIDI track over to this other place. Same thing with FL Studio, or probably Bitwig as well. So let's have a listen to what this sounds like. So I'll play the thing first without harmony, so just a clean voice.
Full time, you talk your money up.
A little bit of reverb.
While it's living in a coal mine. Tall time.
Right, where's that reverb is here. So there's a little bit of EQ, a little bit of delay, a little bit of reverb here, some third-party plugin. But now let's turn on the Harmony Engine, and these are the notes of the harmony. So I just threw in some notes obviously in the key of the song, and let's have a listen to what this sounds like.
Full time, you talk your money up. While it's living in a coal mine. Tall time to call you ma. Hey ma, hey ma. Tall for.
That sounds really cool. I love that, right? So all the harmony in real time, I'm just adding all these notes, and the Harmony Engine is creating it. A very cool thing here is the spread. So we're getting MIDI information, or this plugin is getting MIDI information from another track, but which defines the harmony. But we can decide what is the range going to be for this harmony that it's creating. You can spread the range. So even though you're playing like a close voicing, it's going to spread that out. So you can get like really low notes, really high notes. You can change the register, move it closer to the lower end or go up higher. So, and this is something you can change in real time as well. Again, when I say real time, I'm talking about in real time when you're performing, or you can automate it in a production. So let's play with that as the audio is playing.
Full time, you talk your money up. While it's living in a coal mine. Tall time to call you ma. Hey ma, hey ma.
So much fun, right? All that nice gliding. There's a glide time here, so as I move, that kind of glides into those upper octaves and lower octaves. So if you've heard Bon Iver, any music from Bon Iver, was most recent stuff. He uses this plugin. You've heard the classic Imogen Heap Hide and Seek. She did not use this plugin, but you get that exact same effect because it's basically harmony generation. Yeah, Wasim mentioned that, Imogen Heap, and even Shubham, Imi. So that is harmony generation. Now, this plugin, let's say if you don't have this one, there's another alternative, Nectar from Isotope. Isotope makes a lot of cool plugins for vocal processing. So this is kind of like a vocal production suite. So it has pitch corrections, closes preset browser, pitch correction, gating, harmony engine, saturation, EQ, compression, so all kinds of stuff that you would need for vocal production. So let's check out what Nectar would sound like. I'll turn off harmony engine here. Nectar. Not doing it. So right now pitch, so I have auto tune on, so Nectar does auto tune. You turn on the auto tune thing, set the speed to 0, so you get that stepping effect, and of course you set the key of the song, so the song is in B major. So that is on, but let's turn on the harmony engine. Turn on harmony engine, so it has this automatic voices thing, so you can see these are the different voices. This is the gain, on y-axis gain, x-axis panning. So there's up to four voices you can create, just like harmony engine. You can spread that across, and then you can define, okay, turn on voice number 1. I'll turn off MIDI control here. Set it to down a fourth, or up a third, down an octave, up an octave. And you notice that it doesn't say major or minor because it'll follow the key. Right, so you can set up what key you want over here. Let's say major, was it B major maybe? B major, and then it'll automatically decide if it's supposed to be a major third or a minor third, a major sixth or a minor sixth, right? Major seventh, minor seventh, because it'll be diatonic. So that's awesome. So you can kind of, be a little lazy and then just automatically creating these harmonies, or you can set it to MIDI control, right? So now MIDI control does exactly the same thing Antares does. So I have these 4 voices. It is not deciding what the pitch is going to be for those 4 voices. We have to decide by giving it MIDI data. I'm using this exact same notes, this on this other track here, and it is going to Nectar. And let's have a listen to that.
Full time, you're talking money up. World's living in a gold mine. Tell time to call you ma. Hey ma, hey ma.
Sounds a bit different. Sounds a little like dissonant, right? Sounds like there's a weird chorusing going on. They also have this pitch and delay thing. So for the 4 voices on x-axis, you can, it's very subtle though. On x-axis, you can adjust timing up to 100 milliseconds. So if you had 4 singers sing together, they may not sing perfectly at the same time. So you can kind of emulate that with this. And on the y-axis, it's detuning, right? It's still very subtle. It only goes up to 100 cents. But can we just double click? Yeah, if you double click, you can reset everything back to basically 0. So we still have some delay, but there's no detuning effect.
Time to call you ma. Hey ma, hey ma.
And another issue is that we do not have any kind of spread control. So it is just looking at the note sampling. So if it's all like block chords, like over here, all closed voicing, it's going to play it exactly like that. If it's a more open voicing, like wherever that happened like that, it's going to open up, right? And in Antares, in real time, you're adjusting, your kind of like your voicing, your spread of your voicing. So that is Isotope Nectar, basically having that same effect. Now here's another little secret not many people know. Contact, Native Instruments Contact. Has anyone used Contact? It's basically a sampler. It's great for like if you need real world instruments, like I need a real piano sound, I need like orchestral sounds. You could potentially use Contact, and usually in Contact on the left here you can see acoustic guitars, orchestral instruments, pianos, real drums, more synthetic stuff as well. So it's a huge collection of different sounds you get with Contact, the sampler. Now Contact, the sampler, you can also make your own sampled instrument, right? So here is Contact, the sampler, where I've dragged in that exact same recording, just spread it out across the entire keyboard range. And if I was to just switch to the sampler mode and just play this track right now on the keyboard, play middle C, it'll just play back that sample as is, play higher. It can get a chipmunk effect, it's playing it faster and higher, play a lower note. He plays it slower, which is kind of a cool effect. You can kind of experiment with stuff like that. But that's not what I want, because if I play a chord right now, yes, it is transposing it, but it's all out of time because the higher one is faster, the lower one is slower. But we have like let's call it like warp. Like in Ableton Live, we use the term warping when you're stretching audio. So there's like a warp feature in Contact that we can engage. It's called Tone Machine. When you enable that, you actually get multiple things. It's kind of like a very fancy vocoder, like a built-in vocoder. So what's happening here is that it's discarding the pitch information from the original voice. So now if I play just one note, we're just hearing that note. We're hearing the note C, but we're hearing what the singer was singing. If I play a triad, it's all they all following the notes I'm playing, and it's also stretched out, right? So there's no timing issues. All the voices are perfectly aligned up, and so just to hear the same thing with the exact same notes, let's listen to that.
Full time, you're talking money up. While it's living in a coal mine. Total time to call you ma. Hey ma.
You can adjust the performance.
Don't fall, you know you mop it up. Well, you want it in your life. You're back in
Yeah, not very smooth sounding, but yeah, you can kind of mess with the performance of the voice like that. So yeah, pretty cool. Like, Contact can be used as a very fancy vocal processor. Unfortunately, Contact is the one thing that you can't do in real time, right? Because you have to record the vocals, load it into Contact, and play notes, right? So I can't like sing and play Contact along because Contact doesn't. It's not like a live sampler. So that's one thing you can't do with Contact. Feel free to throw in some questions as I move on to kind of like a next topic, but still kind of related. We're talking about formants. We saw the formant control on the vocoder. We saw the formant control here. There was a formant. I'm not sure. I think there wasn't a formant control on vocal synth or a Nectar. But there are some plugins that will just give you formant control. Logic has like a default, like a native plugin where you can just adjust the formants, and it's pretty nice. It does a decent job. But if you're using any other DAW, you could use a third-party plugin. A bunch of those. Sound Toys makes one called Little Alter Boy. It's a little expensive, but Waves makes one called Vocal Bender. BENDER. Wait, is it? Yeah, it's called Vocal Bender. A very simple plugin, mono, stereo. Let's throw in the mono version. No, this is stereo. But it is mono, whatever, doesn't matter. So load this in here. So it's a very simple plugin. You can transpose the voice in semitones, or you can just transpose the formants. Yeah. The Little Alter Boy is exactly the same thing. It has pretty much all the same features. The main difference being Little Alter Boy adds a lot of latency. So if you're performing live and you would do this to your voice live, you will hear your clean voice, and if you have the dry wet up, down, right? So you're hearing the clean voice, and then you hear the formant transpose voice. Or if you have it all the way up, you won't hear your voice when you're singing it. You'll hear it like, 200 milliseconds later. And it's a pretty significant delay. This one does not add any delay. It's zero. In Ableton Live, to check how much latency a particular plugin adds, hover your cursor on this name over here, and the bottom you can see here. See the latency, 0 samples. Here, this Harmony Engine adds latency. I mean, it's doing so much work, so it definitely will add latency. This one adds 29 milliseconds, which is not bad, but that's enough if you're doing like percussive singing, right? So you will hear like it's a bit latent. But let's check out formant transposition. So let's say I only want to change the formants of this voice. It was on this track, so I'll solo this one.
Time you talk your money up while it's living in a coal mine. Total time to call you ma.
It's stepping, but there's a fine thing that you can engage, and you'll get the smooth control.
Time you talk your money up while it's living in a coal mine.
And to prove that this does work live, I'll just speak into it. Use my voice here again. Now you will hear my voice sounds. There is delay, but I think that's because of Zoom. But that's deeper version of my voice, and higher pitch version. So yeah, so that's formant transposition with Vocal Bender. That can be a fun thing to play with in real time. Any questions? I'm going to give you more examples over here. Using these techniques in context. Feel free to throw in those questions. Adi, how long are we doing this session for? I never checked with y'all, like how long our session is. Don't want to bore you all. I'm not sure if he's there. But yeah, we can go on for as long as you want. But I'm going to show you a quick example here. So this is a cover of, I don't know if you know the song Boy by Charlie Puth. So I have a vocal recording here and full arrangement and all that stuff, but use a lot of Antares Harmony Engine, Isotope Nectar, Auto-Tune, all these different things to kind of create this, nice vocal production effect. Play a little bit here.
These guys trying to lock me down and I always let them leave. Before the
Actually, I'll show you. I have another version where we're just focusing on the voice. This is 1.1. Just give me a second. I'll load another version so you can focus on all the vocal production stuff and not focus on the arrangement so much. Right, give this a second.
Guys trying to lock me down and I always let them leave. But for the first time in a while, I wanna throw away the key. You've been in a couple more relationships than me, 'cause you talk a different talk and you kiss me differently. Now I don't know where to go after you love me this way. After you love me so good, how are you gonna tell me you don't wanna stay? You tell me.
And then goes to the main groove of the track. So one key thing with all this stuff is you still need to work with really good singers, right? So here I'm working with a really fantastic singer. Even the previous demo that I showed you, really good singers. They have a good voice. They're singing really well. And then you do all this stuff, and it just elevates the production quality and the interest that your audience will have with a particular track. So this was everything you heard just now was just Harmony Engine.
These guys.
Those are the notes that are going into Harmony Engine. On the vocal here, you can see Harmony Engine running. I did automate those parameters available there to automate in real time.
Like a boy, you won't wake up beside me, 'cause I was.
So this we did during the pandemic, like last year, like right in the middle of the pandemic. She was a student at Berklee. She's moved on now. So I didn't even work with her. She recorded the vocals herself. And she was traveling, so she didn't have time to record a lot. So she just sent me her initial vocal parts, and we couldn't do harmonies. So I figured, okay, so we can just like create fake harmonies, right?
Like a boy, you won't wake up beside.
So just for that part where she sings like a boy, they have this fake harmony that supports the main vocal part.
Fine, like a boy, go and treat me like.
So more stuff over here.
Now I don't know where to go. After you love me this way, after you love me so good, how are you gonna tell me you don't wanna stay? You tell me I'm too young, but I gave you.
A lot of people do this in modern pop production these days. You have the lead voice, but you also have a voice an octave below. And this is not anybody else, not me. It's the same singer. I just transposed the voice down. So Ableton Live, and again, other DAWs also have this, where you can transpose a voice and warp it so it's aligned. It doesn't change the timing. And you get form and controls as well. So if you just listen to the transpose voice.
You tell me I'm too young, but I gave you.
So that's an interesting voice. But if I don't change the formants.
You tell me I'm too young, but I gave you what you wanted.
It's trying to maintain the original quality of the singer, like maintaining that there's a female singer, but just playing an octave lower. So it does that. But if I bring it all the way down, kind of like if it was just in Contact or regular sampler, it'll sound like this.
You tell me I'm too young, but I gave you what you wanted.
So it's nice that you have, all these controls in between. You can decide what is this harmony going to sound like in terms of the actual timbre of the voice. So that's what I played with there for the lower harmony. I think at some point I even had a higher harmony. It's unsolo.
Baby, don't you treat me like a boy. Go and treat me like. Go and treat me like. Go and treat me like. Go and treat me like.
Yeah, it's very loud here because this version of the session I just cranked up all the vocals to demonstrate this. So this vocal part here is up by 7 semitones, right? This one here, the bottom one here, is well, it changes. So if you're just transposing things, just moving it up by 7 semitones may not work throughout. You may want to, it's further subdivided. So this one is up by 12. This one is up by 10. This one is 10 plus 15. I'm looking over here, right? So if I select the audio, you can see up by 12. This one is up by 10. So it's like a flat 7. Plus 10, so on and so forth. So that sounds like a dynamically moving harmony. So if you don't have any of these plugins, you can just do this. Yeah? Just use transposition in the audio itself. So if you just hear, let's say, these two parts together.
Baby, don't you treat me like a boy. Go and treat me like. Go and treat me like. Go and treat me like. Go and treat me like.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's changing instead of just the same +7 or plus 12. More examples here.
You tell me I'm too young, but
Yeah, here we have an octave above, and you want to think about this. You're building a song. It's 3-4 minutes long. You don't want to give up everything right at the beginning. You want to kind of gradually introduce, intensity, dynamics in the song. So I kind of save the octave above for the last chorus.
You tell me I'm too young.
So that's the lower voice, and then this is the octave above. Sounds kind of silly, up, transpose up, pretty high like this. But I am treating this more like a texture to thicken up the existing voice, right? We have the original voice, octave below, some harmonies in the middle, and then this voice an octave above. So yes, by itself it sounds kind of goofy, but in context of the bigger picture, it'll sound nice and full.
you tell me I'm too young, but I give you what you want to. Baby, how do you treat me just fine? Like a boy, you won't wake up beside me, 'cause I was born in the 90s. Baby, how do you treat me just fine? Like a boy, boy.
Yeah, so there you go. And of course, usual reverb, delay, EQ, compression, standard things that you would do on the voice anyway. I guess I could show you a little bit of that as well. So I'm using isotope Nectar. Let's see what is active here. Pitch correction. So even though she's pretty much on point, it's a really difficult song to sing, and originally it's a male voice, so it was kind of a little bit out of her range, but she still did a decent job. So a little bit of pitch correction there, some EQing, cutting some mid frequencies here, some extreme mid frequencies, cutting some extreme lows, heavy compression to kind of make it consistent in terms of amplitude, and then reverb delay, right? So I'm using Sense. I have a reverb set up here. This is like a third-party plugin. This is from Native Instruments, Rome Reverb. But yeah, use any reverb, whatever reverb you get in your DAW. Like Logic has one called Space Designer that's really nice. There's a new one called Chromaverb that's really, really nice as well. Ableton Live has a bunch of decent reverbs. FL Studios, Reverb too, that's a good one as well. Delays also help. And delay, doesn't matter what you use, but in this case, I'm using an emulation of a guitar pedal. So guitarists over here, you might recognize this particular device. So it's a emulation of a analog style delay pedal. So this is made by Arturia. So it kind of gives us a bit of that analog vibe. The delay is slightly out of tune. It's kind of filtered, a little bit distorted. So it kind of gives you a little bit of that vibe going on that people like. But aside from that, it's essentially just a delay. So yeah, so those are some of the add-on things that I would add to a production. All right, any other questions? Would you like me to demonstrate anything else, specific things? Or I could just give you more examples.
Yeah, I think this might be a good point for us to just open up to questions. And thanks, Rishabh. This was really informative, man. Like some really
Sure,
cool
yeah.
examples and very musical as well.
Cool,
So,
yeah.
yeah, so if anybody wants to unmute themselves, feel free. Or if you wanna, add some questions in the chat box, we can, take one or two questions. We don't want to take too much of Rishabh's time. I'm sure you have a busy day ahead.
No worries, yeah, no worries. Always willing to answer questions if there are any.
So how many of you have used some of these techniques, or like are familiar with some of these ideas?
Maybe I'll stop sharing my screen here. Yeah, there we go. Me. Hey, Krishna says, I have tried this before. Wasim also has tried stuff like this. Yeah.
Wow, quite a quiet room. So yeah. No questions? Anything you want to share? Okay, was this helpful? Maybe you can raise your hand or like do that thing on the reaction thing. Did anybody find this helpful? Okay, great. Things like that. Yeah.
All right. Okay. People are alive. Yay.
Yes,
Okay.
that's what I wanted to check.
Yeah, it is. It can be a little awkward doing this whole Zoom thing. Right? So
Exactly.
sometimes it's nicer to do things in person. Maybe in the future, at some point, come back to India and can do a
Definitely,
production
definitely,
thing in
Rishabh.
person.
Yeah, I mean,
Then
it
you
would
won't
be
feel shy. Then I'll be in your face like, tell me, do you like this? Tell me, say something right now.
oh my
Right?
God.
I can't do that right now because you're all protected by the internet.
Yeah, no, Rishabh, we definitely want to, get you to our campus very soon whenever you're traveling here.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, and obviously hearing you sing was also fun, Rishabh.
Hey, you sing, right? You used to sing. You
Yes,
did an
I
album
did.
with you singing as well, didn't you?
Yeah. That was a while back.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Question. Yay. All right.
It's without
It's Vida. Yeah.
without it's a bit out of the topic. You vocal process the whole the vocal thing, right? The one that you played.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I wanted to know like do you actually like sidechain the reverb?
That's the question. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure. I was wondering if there's more
yeah,
to it.
that's like I think it's reverb sidechain, or do you just throw the reverb, or do you like sidechain it to like whenever?
like a
Do the
kick drum or something like that.
vocals, like
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so in fact, let me quickly switch back to the full version of this track, I think 1.1. And so for those of you wondering, like, what is sidechaining? It's basically this pumping effect that you can introduce into your music that can be rhythmic, and it kind of like pumps along with the music. So let's say my kick drum is like 4 on the floor, right? You hear this kick drum, 4 on the floor, meaning like there's a kick drum on every downbeat, right? It's assuming the music is in 4/4. So when that kick drum is hitting, maybe you have this consistent vocal or a consistent bass or a consistent synth sound. So whenever that kick drum hits, I would like the vocal slash bass slash synth, whatever, I would like it to kind of duck out of the way. So every time the kick hits, the music, those elements kind of duck out of the way, but then they come back when the kick stops playing. So that's a technique that's very common in electronic dance music. And yeah, I absolutely sidechain the hell out of everything, right? So I love that sound of sidechaining. I kind of do it in an exaggerated fashion sometimes. In this case, I'm not sure if I did it in an exaggerated fashion, but if you look at so I have a track here for reverb. Now you can use a technique called sidechain compression, or you can just use a plugin like, oh, sorry, what did I just do? Sorry, this button here. This is a plugin called Nicky Romero's Kickstart, where it gives you that effect of sidechaining by just pumping the volume consistently like that. And for some reason, I automated it. So maybe it only happens at a particular location. Let's find out where it happens. So you can see here, it happens just over here. So let's have a listen to this. This is the part where everybody goes like that, right, in the club. And this is happening on all, pretty much everything. It's happening on the actual voice, it's happening on the reverb, it's happening on the synth elements. Right? You hear that? The bass. Right, there's, maybe not on the bass. Well, that's weird. Is this a bass? No, that's not the bass. Okay, maybe I forgot. But usually when I do this, I'll put sidechain compression on everything. Bass definitely should have. You can see that gets kickstart thing there. Solo it. Right, so you get that pumping effect. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that also helps kind of when you have too much reverb, it can kind of come in the way of other elements. So with some sidechain compression or pumping like this, all that stuff kind of is moving musically, right? So it increases volume, it decreases, increases in volume, it decreases. So that creates this nice, musical effect. So yeah, I absolutely do that, all the time. Cool. Hope that answered your question.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
Yeah,
sure,
yeah,
Vijay.
go ahead.
Yeah.
So, adding to what my friend just said, just said, he was actually asking if you sidechain the reverb to the vocals. Like every time the vocal comes in, the reverb ducks. Do
Oh,
you,
okay. That's what you meant. That's an even better question. No, you could absolutely do that, but I don't specifically do that. And there's no right or wrong. Do whatever you want, right? So there's just when it comes to production, there's usually just one rule I say that you should do, which is your master, like the combination of all the tracks, should not go above 0 and it should not clip, basically, right? Aside from that, do whatever you want to do, right? So it's really up to you. That's a good way to kind of going back to the same thing where I was saying, if you have too much reverb, it's kind of coming in the way of the dry sound. So whenever the voice, the clean sound is there, maybe the reverb can duck out of the way. So yeah, absolutely a great technique to make room for the voice. I've done that in the past for echo, for delays, right? Delays can really come in the way a lot. So your lead voice is singing something, and then the echo is like, listen to me also, right? So like, can you keep quiet? I'm still singing something else there. So you can do like sidechain compression on your repeats. I've even done it. I remember, now that I think about it, I've done sidechain compression on the entire song through the voice. So what I mean by it is whenever the singer is singing, the entire music, the entire arrangement, the bass, the drums, the synths, the backing vocals, everything else becomes, in a very subtle way, not in this very dramatic way, in a subtle way, gets a bit quieter. So that way the voice is always, present. I remember I had to do that because I had this arrangement that was really complex. There was orchestral elements, electronic elements. It was getting really full. Like, how do I make this voice stand out a bit more? So I kind of use that technique to kind of make room for the voice. Yeah, so side chaining to the voice. Great technique there. Cool. With sorry, I pronounced your name wrong there. So do you have another follow-up question? No? Okay.
actually, I do. Like
Okay,
when
sure.
you make a track, I'm really sorry for interrupting. When you make a track, right? So how many vocals do you have like properly set? Like because I just recently made a hip hop track, I had like 3 layers. But when I went into some electro pop track, I'm having like including vocal ad libs, I'm having like 10 to 11. So like, is it way too much or is it way too less? Any idea, or I'm just overworking on the vocals by just
Not at
recording the
all.
stacks of them?
Yeah. It's again, like I said, there's no rule. So I think that question should be for your computer. Ask your computer, is this okay? Can you deal with this? Right? So your
It has already
computer,
said no.
it already said no, right? So talk to your
No.
computer, like make it feel good, buy it some chocolate or whatever. So if your computer can handle it, yeah, go crazy. Do whatever it takes to make, your vision of your track, complete. So
So how do you bring in space between those multiple stacks of layers so that the main vocal only stands out the most of the time in the whole track?
yeah, so that becomes more of a mixing thing, right? Because you have all these layers. Now, how do I make this one element stand out? Because there's so many different layers here, so you kind of want to make sure to mix. Panning is one thing, right? So you're centered. Your lead vocal could be in the center. Someone mentioned that in the chat, Abhishek. Panning. So make some of those harmonies, move some harmonies to the left, some harmonies to the right, make it a bit quieter. One thing I do, which is, let's see if I did it over here. So a lot of times I talk about stuff, but I don't actually do it because in the process when you're making music, you're not thinking about. I don't know. At least I don't think about techniques, and I just do what sounds good at that moment, right? And that's a good approach to take. But let's see if I did it here. I guess I didn't because So in this song, we didn't really, like I mentioned, we didn't really get a chance to record multiple layers and stuff like that. But if I do record multiple layers. What I will do is all the harmony parts, I will make sure to either cut out or make very quiet all the breaths in between. Right? So let's say we have a breath over here. Sorry, I can overlap that. Maybe there's another breath over there. Because if you don't, and even if you're duplicating and making fake harmonies, that one breath is like 10 times, right? Because you have 10 layers of that. So you don't want to hear the super loud breaths. You want to kind of, cut out all the other breaths and just you still want a breath because then it sounds really unnatural. Keep the main lead vocal, leave the breath sound in there, and remove all the breaths on the backing harmonies. And it's totally fine to just hear the notes and, just even if it abruptly cuts off. In fact, that's a cool technique to use where you hear the harmony and then cuts off, hear the harmony and then cuts off. And that creates a nice impact because it's not like always there and it's like, it's getting a little, too much. So you can kind of play around with those layers. So if you have like 10, 15 ad-libs or whatever layer parts, think about, okay, do I want this throughout the song, 4-minute, 5-minute song? That's going to be a bit too much. Save it for certain parts of the track instead of just having it throughout, right? And that will make your life also easier because you just have to worry about that one part that has many layers as opposed to the whole song has so many layers, yeah? So that, I guess, making those decisions during production as opposed to like mixing can also help. If you are the producer and you're also mixing it, that makes it easy. So you can decide, I'm going to tone it down here because it'll be easier to mix. You get to decide that. So yeah, that's something you can consider. I think while I was speaking, there was a hand raised. I'm not sure if someone else had a question. Was there another one? I don't know. Maybe not.
That was great. Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion actually. When you have like, let's say 15 tracks, or if you like Jacob Collier and you have like 100 tracks, you probably need to do a lot of cleanup, right? Yeah, there's one question there.
Oh, in the chat, do you use Melodyne Autotune to tune a vocal? Yes. So in some of these productions, Melodyne. So the great tools out there to fix pitch issues and stuff like that. But I'll tend to work with singers who can sing decently and sing kind of in pitch, so I don't have to worry about like going to each and every note, like let's tune this note, let's tune that note, right? So maybe overall, like this song we just heard, overall there's some of those extremely high notes she was a bit out, fix that with like some very subtle auto tune. But Melodyne is great for like zooming in and surgically fixing, or even like you could even use, in a creative sense, you can use Melodyne to create harmonies, right? Because in Melodyne, you can treat your audio like MIDI. So you can make a copy of your entire recording and then just move the notes up and down and create a new melody or create a new harmony like that. So yeah, that's a great tool. Yeah, absolutely. I haven't used Melodyne often, even though I have it, but because the singers are really good, but I do use autotune as an effect to get that auto-tune T-Pain, share kind of an effect, or sometimes it's like very subtle, so you're not hearing it that much. But yeah, so those are great. Melodyne, autotune, or yeah, vocal manually. I just tell the singer, can you sing that again? It was a little out, so let's sing the part again. That can also help, because if you have a good recording, anything else you do, you're just making it better, as opposed to working with a weak performance and you're trying to make it decent, right? So that may not be the best result in the end. But yes, that's a good question.
Great. I think we have a lot to take home from that session. Actually, it was quite power packed, Rishabh. There's so many things in there for us to take back and try on our own. Yeah.
Awesome.
So thank you everybody for being here. And there have been requests to continue sessions like this. So what I'll do is I'll just put our handle over here. You can just follow us on Instagram to know when we're doing more sessions, and we'd love for Rishabh to come back and do some more things. If you have any topic suggestions for us to do them, please share with us. We can do different things. I think Rishabh was suggesting one on live looping, so if that's something that sounds interesting, we could do one on that as well. And I mean, if you can have him here on the campus, that'd be amazing as well. I think I spelled institute wrong. Wait, scrap that. Yeah. So
that goes somewhere else.
Yeah. Okay, let me do it again. There we go.
Vijay says, thanks a lot for inspiration. Going to kill my laptop with vocal layers. Yeah, go for it. Right, so as long as your computer can handle it, yeah, as many layers as you want, yeah, go for it.
Definitely. So thanks again, Rishabh. This was really wonderful, and
Absolutely.
thank you
My
everybody
pleasure.
for being here. Let's all stay connected, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you, guys. Hope you all have a good evening. Take care. Bye bye.